Good morning, delegates. The United Nations values your presence here today. As your chairperson, it is declared that the General Assembly discussing migration and immigration regularization is now in session. As an issue of extreme global gravity, this chairperson hopes for a fruitful and prolific conference, which brings us to the issue at hand. As they leave persecution, poverty, or violence in the developing and underdeveloped worlds, an ever-increasing number of individuals embark on perilous treks aboard tiny, unseaworthy watercraft. Since 2014, 116 migrants have been reported dead or missing in the English Channel, and 22,930 migrants in the Mediterranean Sea. According to the International Organization of Migration, the drowning of at least 27 persons was recorded on November 25th, and another 116 migrants were rescued in French seas the following Wednesday. Over 31,000 people have tried the perilous journey between France and the United Kingdom since the beginning of last year. As a result, the French government recorded 78,000 individuals rescued at sea. To avert a repeat of similar tragedies in the English Channel, immediate action is essential. This is of global importance as a breaching of human rights in its entirety, arousing dispute between neighboring nations and disparity between the children of the globe, calling for diplomacy and the liaison of the United Nations to resolve this matter. We shall begin with the roll call. When your delegation is named, please rise and state whether you are present or present and voting. Is the Delegate of Britain here?
Present and voting.
The Delegates of France?
Present and voting.
The Delegates of Germany?
Present and voting.
The Delegate of Belgium?
Present and voting.
The Delegates of Iraqi Kurdistan?
Present and voting.
Very well. As the chairperson, I will now be setting the agenda. The agenda before us today is the discussion of the concern of treacherous migration across the English Channel. We shall now open a primary speakers list to discuss whether delegates are in favor or against setting the agenda to the topic previously mentioned. All those wishing to be added to the primary speakers list, please raise your hands now. All right. First, we will have the Delegate of Britain speaking. The Delegate of Britain, you now have the floor.
The Delegate of the United Kingdom would like to bring to your attention the severity of the issue of human trafficking along the English Channel and the growing concerns and dangers that it brings forth. The United Kingdom stands for the human rights and well-being of the Iraqi Kurdish migrants and is greatly concerned by the possible threats and dangers of the channel crossings on their lives. It is in order to address this concern that the delegates of the United Kingdom would like to bring to your attention the UN Transnational Organized Crime Convention, which defines human trafficking as a criminal and punishable offense. The Iraqi migrants migrating across the English Channel are endangering their own lives by unknowingly becoming victims of this organized crime. The British Armed Forces, as well as the security committees of other members of the EU, cannot be held accountable for the immediate repercussions of such organized crime, yet out of concern for the growing severity of the matter, the Delegate of the United Kingdom would like to emphasize on the importance of cooperation from France and the EU in order to increase port security and devise a sustainable solution to the issue of illegal migration.
Thank you, Delegate. We will now have the Delegate of France. The Delegates of France, you now have the floor.
Honorable chairs, fellow delegates, and most esteemed guests, the Delegate of France would like to bring your attention to the grave injustice that has occurred during the English Channel crisis, where 27 migrants from different countries attempted to cross the English Channel to reach Britain, but due to the dangerous waters, their boats capsized. Immediately after receiving this news, the country of France provided rescue teams to help the migrants. The Delegate of France conveys that France will take a humanitarian approach to the issue. France will take a stand supporting the migrants and explaining their point of view. The majority of people who apply for asylum do so because their lives and safety are under threat from war. violence or human rights abuses in their homeland. The Delegate of France conveys that the French have been using Britain's border patrol investments in a wide way, and the Senate report stated that France considers that it is doing its maximum to monitor its coast. During its hearing, the DGEF underlined that this effort has cost France 217 million euros. The French government believes that the lack of migration routes is a problem, and the tackling of the migration problem requires a joint effort and working with the EU to improve border patrols. It is an issue that affects many countries, in collaboration without conflict would benefit the situation immensely.
Thank you, Delegate. The next delegate, you now have the floor. This will be the Delegates of Germany.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, fellow delegate, and esteemed guest. Illegal migration and human trafficking across borders happens all over the world and has recently resulted in massive tragedy, with 27 people drowning in the English Channel on 25th November 2022. The Federal Republic of Germany is a weighty stakeholder, as we were also accused of being the criminal trafficking hub by Britain. The UK also said that the suppliers, smugglers and boats were all stationed in Germany, which means Germany is also involved. The Delegate of Germany would also like to work with other European countries to solve this issue. We are ready to collaborate and deploy a Coast Guard using people from all around Europe. This problem can only be solved by cooperation between all the countries involved. We look forward to this debate and a solution to this problem.
Thank you, delegates. We will now have the next delegates, the Delegates of Belgium.
Honorable chairs, fellow delegates, and most esteemed guests, the Delegate of Britain, Belgium would like to bring to your attention the dangers of illegal migration. Belgium and Britain can work together to maintain responsible sailing in the sea and are looking to collectively move forward and work together towards preventing smuggling and trafficking in the ocean. The EU and Belgium's policies elucidate that migrants traveling illegally across seas is unwarranted and will not be taken lightly. Belgium shares maritime borders with the UK and will be allying with them to emphasize the importance of regulation to legalize the immigration of refugees with achievable methods as opposed to illegally. The Kingdom of Belgium has provided legal migrants with several opportunities to have a profitable living and one with a good quality of life. But the tolerance for illegal migration is very low. Since Belgium pays attention to human rights, it is made sure that the treatment of migrants is fair and just. The Kingdom of Belgium proposes to work together with many countries to conquer the crisis, but first it needs the cooperation of France. Belgium believes it is possible to collectively improve border patrols and safety regulations, and for that, it will need combined efforts.
Thank you, Delegate. The Delegates of Iraqi Kurdistan will now have the floor.
Good morning, Honorable Chairs and fellow delegates. A home is very important for an individual. Having to flee that home can be devastating, and having to risk their lives to do so is absurd. The delegates of Iraq are aware of the happenings regarding the migration. Attempts taken by people hoping to pursue their way from France to Britain. We as a country are surprised by the lack of communication represented by the British and French Coast Guards. These are thousands of people from war-torn countries such as Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, and Sudan, looking to find a place to live their lives, but only a handful of rewarded refugees. However, Iraq is currently not a war-torn country, which means Iraqis have to risk their lives to find a home. In the French and British Coast Guards are not a clear communication, then many more lives are at risk. They are at risk of ending up homeless even if they are awarded refugee as irregular migrants, or with no income when they enter a country.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you to all the delegates for your opening speeches. Seeing that the primary speakers list has been exhausted, we will automatically close the debate on setting the agenda and move to the general debate. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hands now. Thank you. All those wishing to be added to the general speakers list, please raise your hands now. This is in order. Are there any delegates wishing to speak as participants of the general debate? This is in order. Are there any seconds to this motion? Thank you. Are there any objections to this motion? Okay. Thank you. Seeing seconds and objections, we will now take this to a vote. All those in favor of this motion to open the debate, please raise your hands now. All those against this motion, please raise your hands now. All right. Seeing that this is in order, this motion will pass. Seeing that all of the delegates here today have added their names to the general speakers list and that everyone is in favor of opening general debate, we may now proceed. Delegate of Britain, you now have the floor for your general argument.
The delegates of the United Kingdom would like to emphasize that the safety of the Iraqi Kurdish migrants is of primary concern to Britain. Yet the criminal offense of human trafficking cannot be undermined. The delegates of the United Kingdom would like to reiterate that the Iraqi Kurdish migrants are endangering their own lives by unknowingly becoming a part of this criminal offense. This is an issue that Britain strives to eradicate. However, the delegates of the United Kingdom would like to bring to your attention that the cooperation of France as well as the other members of the EU is essential to support the United Kingdom in making plausible attempts to improve portal security and prevent further risks of dangers at sea. The United Kingdom would like to address the concerns of the UNHCR, which has emphasized on the importance of raising awareness on the risks of illegal crossings by sea in collaboration with the EU. It is in the responsibility of the delegate of the United Kingdom to convey that organized crime groups have used German ports to store dangerous and unseaworthy vessels. As a law-abiding country, Britain firmly believes that safety must be restored along the English Channel and the criminal act of human trafficking entirely stopped. The delegate of the United Kingdom would like to speak on behalf of the British government to convey the severity of organized crime that is largely being facilitated on German land, and express the need for urgent precautionary methods. Without the cooperation of German authorities, organized crime along the English Channel cannot be stopped. Thousands of Iraqi Kurdish citizens will continue to risk their lives to migrate along a path that will almost certainly have fatal results. The British government cannot stand for such a violation of human rights and therefore requests German authorities to acknowledge and take action against the criminal human trafficking that is occurring on German land, the consequences of which have been and continue to be dire.
Thank you, Delegate. How do you wish to yield your time?
This delegate would like to yield the remaining time to the Delegate of Germany.
Delegates of Germany, the Delegate of Britain has yielded their time to you. Do you accept?
Yes.
All right. The Delegates of Germany, you now have the floor for the remaining time.
Germany was recently called the hub of criminal trafficking groups in Europe by Britain. But the delegate of Germany feels that while smugglers may plot the channel crossing in Germany and store all the equipment on our land, Germany also feels that the border force and the coast guards of all the countries along the channel and around Europe must work together towards stopping these smugglers in open water. Germany as a country is trying to do its best to catch the smugglers inside German borders and confiscate other goods like boats, life jackets, but we also feel like the Coast Guard efforts along the channel need to be increased to stop this tragedy from ever happening again. Britain and France must also communicate with each other and with other countries in the EU to keep each other informed about the happenings. The European Border and Coast Guard Agency must work with the local coast guards to protect the migrants.
Thank you, Delegate, for your response. The Delegate of Belgium, you now have the floor.
Belgium's constitution ensures freedom of speech and expression. Belgium has always been kind to migrants, especially women. There have been cases of domestic violence, forced marriages, etc. But migrant women don't come forward in fear of being deported. In 2006 and 2007, the Aliens Act law, which is basically about removing foreigners from the land, doesn't apply if migrants come forward and report family violence, they get to retain their residency. So I would like to raise some issues. The first issue is the Delegate of Belgium would like to raise an issue. The first issue is how France isn't cooperating with the rest of the EU. Belgium and Britain said that they will cooperate more closely to fight illegal migration. Days after France snapped Britain, and it had needed to get serious before talks on the matter could resume. Moreover, France had cancelled an important meeting with the Britain's Minister Priti Patel, with all the EU members, including Belgium. And Prime Minister Boris Johnson called for British police patrols along the French coast. The French have rejected this idea, Pierre-Henri Dumont, a member of the French parliament, saying it wouldn't work. The second issue is how little effort France is putting to stop these migrants from crossing the English Channel. The French stated that they were attempting to prevent crossings, but there is no sign of the country implementing a strict change. On the 30th of November, migrants in the Grand Sky in France were cleared away, but one of the anonymous migrants stated that they eventually return in a while, which is counterproductive to what we are aiming for. The third issue is how France isn't trying to better the situation of migration on the English Channel, whereas Belgium and the UK have put continuous efforts into making the migrants' lives easier and have taken so many measures to make sure migrants don't cross the English Channel. These include floating asylum centers planned on retiring ferries in the English Channel and many marine walls. The fourth issue is that the French responded to the 999 missed calls, claimed that they couldn't help migrants as they were in the British waters. But the Good Samaritan law allows a person to voluntarily come forward and to administer immediate assistance or emergency care to a person injured in an accident or crash or emergency medical conditions. France has violated this law, and the UK had sent help as soon as they got to know the information. The fifth issue is that the country of France claimed that Belgium didn't have enough border patrol security systems and implied that the country wasn't attempting forms of protection. Belgium, with constant uncompromising attitude, had several programs to control human trafficking, monitored it carefully with strict evaluation. The sixth issue, and the final issue that that the Delegate of Belgium would like to raise, is that the EU policy has been violated by France. Another policy has been violated by France again. The flag state is responsible for the seaworthiness of the ship. An unseaworthy vessel cannot be put to sea, and it must be prohibited from putting to sea by the authorities of the flag country. As a flag state, which is where the vehicle set from, was France, it did not take responsibility for the vessel, and therefore France is responsible, but they have not owned up to it. Thank you for listening to Belgium.
Thank you, Delegate. How would you like to wish your remaining time? How would you wish to yield your remaining time?
I would like to yield it to France.
The Delegates of France? The Delegate of Belgium has yielded to you. Do you accept?
Yes.
The Delegate of France, you now have the floor.
The Delegate of France would like to say that the Good Samaritan law regards a citizen seeing a boat and wishing to helping them if they wish. It doesn't have any relevance to this debate. Moving on, Britain informally sent various letters and tweets to the government of France with keeping in mind the country's domestic and political gain and interest. In this informal way, British isn't taking this issue seriously and isn't doing anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The Delegates of Iraqi Kurdistan, you now have the floor.
Iraq was invaded in 2003 by Britain. Britain seized Iraq from Ottoman Empire during the First World War. As a result, there were severe consequences in Iraq's economic structure, which made it unsuitable for living standards. The only way of escaping Iraq would be migrating to the West, and there's no legal way to do so. So they would have to migrate in a dangerous route. The British Refugee Law states that it is illegal for migrants to obtain a good economic situation without a valid visa. But in this case, visas weren't even given out to migrants, so they had to opt for this route. Migrants traveled from France to find a better life for themselves, but they were unable to make it past the border when their inflatable dinghy started to deflate. This is more than an issue of migration. This is a humanitarian issue. This issue is preventing innocent civilians from a luxury of a home. The two survivors reported that they phoned the French police and they were informed that they were in British waters.
So they made a call for the British Coast Guards. So they did not respond. The British police said that they received a number of alerts and they have not responded. This is one of the reasons why migrating is dangerous. Britain police do not have a clear communication with the Coast Guards. If this situation were to happen again, then there'd be more lives at stake.
Thank you for your speech, Delegate. How do you wish to yield your remaining time?
The delegates of Iraq would like to yield our remaining time to the delegates of Britain.
The Delegates of Britain, the Delegate of Iraq has yielded their remaining time to you. Do you accept?
I accept.
The Delegate of Britain, you now have the floor.
The delegate of the United Kingdom would like to begin by reminding you that neither Britain nor France are legally bound to rescue illegal migrant boats. This being said, Britain has always cared for the well-being of the migrants, but laws must also consider the several other priorities of the British armed forces. Britain grieves the loss of its Iraqi Kurdish friends, but would also like to remind the delegates of Iraqi Kurdistan that they were a part of a joint rescue mission that saved the lives of some of the Iraqi Kurdish migrants during the accident. In this manner, Britain will continue to prevent harm from reaching the migrant community when it can. However, the government of the United Kingdom has rightfully identified that even with the assistance of both Britain and the EU's armed forces, all Iraqi Kurdish lives cannot be saved, as they rightfully should be. Britain comprehends the value of each of these lives and firmly believes that even a single life lost to organized crime is one too many. Britain seeks the collaborative interest of the EU to devise a sustainable solution to put a stop to this issue, tackling the matter at its very root, the existence of illegal migration across the English Channel.
Thank you for your speech, Delegate. The Delegates of France, you now have the floor.
The Delegate of France would like to state that the dinghy in which the migrants were traveling was rescued by France, and the UK only assisted with the rescue after a thorough review. The British allegation was that they received 999 calls, which were claimed to have been accepted, but the French, contradicting that, felt that the UK had a responsibility to respond to the call by initiating the rescue effort.
The Delegate of France would like to express empathy for the migrants. As a country, France would not see it fair to be caught up in pettiness, but would like to allocate due responsibility. The Delegate of France would like to convey that they have the best interests of the migrants in mind. France entitles all immigrants to benefit from social rights such as health insurance, accommodation, monthly allowance, and a bank account. The response and aid was not rendered to the migrants when required. The blood of the migrants is on Britain's hands, factually and geographically speaking. It is due credit if the legalization of immigration results in such hindrance. The option taken as an alternative as a seek of refuge results in the loss of lives, political dispute, and an unsafe path of transportation, which we hope does not translate to trafficking.
Citizens of countries like Iraq, Kurdistan want to migrate to the UK because they have a connection to the UK. They speak some English, they have family, they have friends and people in their networks. They want to come and stay and rebuild their lives, says Enver Solomon, Chief Executive of Refugee Council. The migrants risk their lives trying to escape to other countries to support their livelihoods and are often found unaware of the immigration laws and simply want better standards of living and quality of life. Why do people go to Calais? It is to go to the Great Britain. And why do they want to go to Great Britain? It's because the labor market largely works in Great Britain thanks to a large army or reserves of people in an irregular situation, but who can work at low cost, obviously. Darmanin said, sometimes in irregular migration cases, the migrant has been denied all chances of living in the EU, and the UK is their last chance of survival. There are several thousands of people attempting to migrate from the France borders, and it is an unachievable goal to stop every single one of the boats.
Thank you, Delegates of France. How do you wish to yield your remaining time?
This delegate would like to yield their time to points of information.
Thank you, Delegate. This delegate has yielded to points of information. Do any delegates here have any points of information? Points of clarification, any delegate? Yes, the Delegate of Belgium has a point of information. The Delegates of France, do you accept this point of information? Yes. The Delegate of Belgium, you now have the floor.
The Delegate of Belgium would like to oppose to what France said. First of all, the Good Samaritan law, it offers legal protection to people who give reasonable assistance to those who are or whom they believe are injured, ill, in peril, or otherwise incapacitated, and it applies to everybody regardless. Another thing they said is that on the December of, they said that the 999 missed calls were not actually made, and the migrants were saved by the French. But on December 1st, the second survivor was reported to have directly witnessed 2 calls from the deflating Dinchi to emergency services. The UK Maritime and Coast Guard Agency said that on 24th November that they had received more than 90 alerts, including 999 missed calls from the English Channel, and had responded to all of the calls.
Thank you, Delegate. The Delegate of France, would you like to respond to that point of information?
The Delegate of France would like to reply by saying the 999 missed calls were given, but there was no rescue operation immediately done, and that's why that was not fair, because the lives of the migrants were at risk, and Britain should have been more strict about this.
The UN defines legal asylum as the protection granted by a state to a foreign citizen against his own state. This is usually, like we mentioned before, like the delegate mentioned before, when they are in severe health conditions. Now, how does the Delegate of Britain define whether there is no way back to their country?
Would you like to yield the remaining time to the Delegate of Britain?
Yes.
The Delegate of Britain, the Delegates of France have yielded their time to you. Do you accept? Yes. All right, this is in order. The Delegates of Britain, you now have the floor.
The Delegate of the United Kingdom would like to reiterate that the United Kingdom respects the migrants immensely. If putting a stop to human trafficking is not feasible, then are these Iraqi Kurdish lives made to be lost? The UNTOC describes human trafficking as a criminal and punishable offense. As a law-abiding country, the United Kingdom follows and respects these policies immensely. We believe that the collaboration and cooperation of the EU and France is necessary in order to stop human trafficking, which is the only feasible way to save all the Iraqi Kurdish lives which have been lost.
All right. Thank you, Delegate of Britain. Seeing that points of information are exhausted, the speech time for the Delegates of France are now elapsed. The Delegates of Germany, you now have the floor to make your general speech.
Britain accused Germany of being a criminal trafficking hub and also accused Germany of housing the boats, life jackets, and supplies. Free travel is allowed between countries in the EU, so the migrants can easily move and contact German smugglers. They feel that it's not Britain's business to talk about the criminals in our country, because that is not what the meeting's about. We are also trying to do our best to apprehend the traffickers within our borders, but once the criminals leave German borders, it is not our concern. It is the responsibility of all the countries along the channel instead of blaming another country. We all need to work together. The migrants traveling from France were in search of a better life. The migrants will not be entitled to a good economic situation as they do not have a visa. Britain had 999 calls and supposedly answered to all of it, but did not take any action immediately. I yield my time to Britain.
All right. Seeing that the Delegates of Germany have yielded their remaining time to Britain, the Delegates of Britain, do you accept this?
Yes.
This is in order, and you now have the floor.
The Delegate of the United Kingdom would like to emphasize that this is an issue of entirely global concern, as it affects and as the United Kingdom has become a victim of this illegal human trafficking. The Delegate of the United Kingdom would like to ask the Delegates of Germany if or if not they are taking this matter to its due concern.
The Delegate of the United Kingdom believes that the collaboration between the countries of the EU is essential to eradicate human trafficking from occurring in the English Channel. The Delegate of the United Kingdom believes that cooperation is essential. The delegate of the United Kingdom would like to urge the countries of the EU to implement increased portal security and comprehend the urgent need for collective action. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. Seeing that the primary round of the general speakers list is exhausted, all those delegates wishing to make arguments, responses, points of information, or alternative speeches, please raise your hands now. Thank you, delegates. The delegates of Iraqi Kurdistan, you now have the floor.
Traveling through this route can be dangerous and is by no means legal. But there's no other way for Iraqis to find a home. Humanity comes first. Britain seizes Iraq and tears the country apart and expects citizens of Iraq to make a good life out of it. Making it illegal for migrants to travel to Britain is absurd. The lack of security and elements of sustainable life are the main migration drives towards the European Union. Thank you.
The delegates of Iraq Kurdistan, how do you wish to yield your remaining time?
The delegates of Iraq wishes to yield their time to the delegates of Britain.
The delegates of Britain, the delegate of Iraq has yielded their remaining time to you. Would you like to accept?
Yes.
This is in order. You now have the floor for response.
The delegate of the United Kingdom would once again like to begin by reminding you that the United Kingdom immensely respects the migrants traveling across the English Channel. However, we, in concern for their lives and for their well-being, suggest that they choose to seek legal asylum rather than illegally crossing the English Channel, endangering their own lives and that of many others. For concern of the Iraqi Kurdish migrants, the delegate of the United Kingdom would like to begin by saying that they respect the lives of the Iraqi Kurdish migrants immensely and therefore would not like for any of them to be lost or endangered.
Thank you, delegate. The delegate of France, you now have the floor to make your second speech.
Smuggling is an issue that the French government and the UK and the Belgian government want to tackle. The argument regarding the migrants illegally smuggling was based on previous smuggling incidents. There is no legal proof that those migrants were smuggling, and the people who were caught were from the Kingdom of Belgium, the country allying with the UK. In this case, it appears evident that the delegate of the United Kingdom display biasness towards Belgium, allowing them to enter their country without legal asylum.
Thank you, delegate. How do you wish to yield your remaining time?
To the delegate of Britain.
The delegate of Britain, the delegates of France have yielded their remaining time to you. Do you accept? Yes. You may proceed.
The delegate of the United Kingdom would like to begin by raising a new point. The delegate of the United Kingdom would like to convey on behalf of the British Home Minister, Ms. Priti Patel, and the British government that the United Kingdom has always respected the human rights of its home citizens as well as those of its visitors. It is with this concern and active involvement that the United Kingdom has tackled several other issues, involving the violation of human rights, a prominent example being the ACPO's Pentameter campaign against human trafficking for sexual purposes. This was a program that the UN welcomed and lauded. Britain is attempting to derive a similar sustainable solution to the issue at hand. However, the British government also believes that the matter brought to light is of immense international concern. No sole victim or offender can be identified. Collaborative effort is essential. The United Kingdom recognizes this issue to be above political differences. It is eager to partner with countries of the EU and restore safety to the British Channel, which is why it has chosen to partner with Belgium. However, the French government's choice to cancel Ms. Priti Patel's invitation to the EU conference has made it immensely difficult for Britain to implement its endeavors of collaboration. The delegate of the United Kingdom would like to reiterate the importance of prioritizing the concerning issue at hand over mere political gain.
Thank you, delegate. Would the delegates of France like to respond to the delegate of Britain? This is in order. The Delegate of Britain, you now have the floor for your speech.
The Delegate of the United Kingdom would like to reiterate that it has always made collaborative effort in order to restore safety along the English Channel, and that it chooses to request the French government to cooperate in order to save the many Iraqi Kurdish lives that are at stake. The Delegate of the United Kingdom wishes to restore the safety and the well-being of the Iraqi Kurdish lives as they deserve it, and the Delegate of the United Kingdom would also like to add that its collaborations with Belgium have allowed it to increase intelligence at ports and save many more Iraqi Kurdish lives as it chooses to do so. However, in order to make a plausible attempt to entirely eradicate the issue of human trafficking, the Delegate of the United Kingdom needs cooperation from all the rest of the countries of the EU, for which the Delegate of the United Kingdom would like to request increased attention from the country of Belgium, along with cooperation from the country of France. It believes that it is in its intention to reduce and stop the entire human trafficking that occurs along the English Channel, save several Iraqi Kurdish lives, and restore law and order to the English Channel as it was.
Thank you, Delegate. How do you wish to yield your remaining time?
Wish yielding time to Belgium.
The Delegate of Belgium, the Delegates of Britain have yielded their remaining time to you. Do you accept?
Yes.
This is in order. You now have the floor.
Okay, the Belgium and as I said, as the Delegate of Belgium mentioned before, Belgium and Britain have paired up and have made several changes in the English Channel to benefit the migrants. And one other thing the Delegate of Belgium would like to raise against Germany is that Germany had mentioned that they were accused by Britain for trafficking hubs, but this isn't an accusation, but merely a fact. Germany has, I'm quoting, the Delegate of Belgium is quoting this directly from the Daily Mail, reported citing a source. So the Germany has become a key location for migrants in crossing over to Britain, as organized crime groups have been using places in the country to plan and attempt the crossing of migrants into the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Delegate. The Delegate of Germany, would you like to respond to that?
The International Organization for Migration said this was the biggest single loss of life in the channel since it began collecting data in 2014. 5 women and a girl were among the dead, France's interior minister said. 4 people had been arrested near the Belgian border, which means that Belgium as a country might have also hid the smugglers and might be part of the operation. The France's interior minister also said that they suspected that Belgian smugglers were also directly linked to this particular crossing.
Thank you, Delegates. Seeing that the general speakers list has been exhausted, the chair would now like to call upon anybody who has remaining speeches to make. Final speeches. All right. The chair would now like to open the floor for cross-sectional points of information. If, for example, if the Delegate of France would like to ask a pointed question to the Delegate of Britain, you may now do so. Yes, Delegate of France.
The UK has not cooperated or accepted several migrants. The UK policies vaguely state that they will be able to use a pushover tactic, which is a safe and legal way to prevent migrants from crossing the English Channel to arrive in Britain. The French government has debated, focusing on the point that the entire overseas system and the livelihood of migrants can be affected by this law. The UK hasn't provided a clear picture of the law and are undecided on a fixed plan. It has also warned Britain against pushing back migrants' boats. an option that has been under discussion by the government in London, saying that this would endanger the lives of the migrants and will break maritime law.
The Delegate of Britain, do you wish to accept and respond to this point of information?
Yes, the Delegate of Britain would like to respond. The Delegate of Britain would like to begin by reminding the delegates of France that the United Kingdom's government has been continually asking for cooperation and coordination from the French government. However, seeing as to the fact that this is not occurring, the government of the United Kingdom is unable to make efforts to put forth a plausible plan, one that the delegates of Britain have already stated and put forth plainly before you. The delegates of Britain would also like to convey, on behalf of the British government, that the UNTOC, an recognized international law devised by the UN, itself states that human trafficking is a criminal and punishable offense. Here, the delegates of the United Kingdom, on behalf of the United Kingdom's government, would like to remind the delegates of France that they are simply putting into place the law and order that should be. The delegate of the United Kingdom would also like to ask the delegates of France what efforts they have put into place in order to reduce the level of reduce the levels of human trafficking along the English Channel. And yeah.
Thank you to the delegates of Britain. The delegates of Britain have put forth a question to the delegates of France. Do you accept to respond?
Yes.
You now have the floor.
As France already mentioned, France considered that it's doing its maximum to monitor its coast, and it's used the 217 million euros to prevent smuggling, but the French government believes that lack of migration routes is an issue, and it affects many countries, and they won't be able to stop every single boat that tries to cross the sea.
Thank you, Delegate of France. Seeing that this reversion has now elapsed, does any other delegate have a point of information to ask to another delegate? Nobody? All right. Seeing that there are no more speeches to be made, points of information to be asked, or time to be yielded, time for this session has now elapsed. General debate has been fruitfully completed, and the agenda being discussed is now on pause. Moderated caucuses and drafting will resume in the upcoming General Assembly reunion. Delegates, thank you for your presence today, and thank you for your representation. The United Nations General Assembly session on migration and regularized immigration is temporarily adjourned. Brings a sense of spontaneousness to the conference. That was very, very well.